Today is an exciting day because today we are 1 week out from our filming trip to New Zealand. 2 years ago, we had this trip planned. It was April 2020. We were super excited and pumped to be going back to New Zealand to go filming for Worship Backgrounds. But as you know, that trip got canceled. And since then, we've been kind of waiting for the ability to go back to New Zealand to use this flight credit that we have and to get done what we had planned for 2020. So now we are 1 week out from going on this trip, and I personally am super excited. I love New Zealand, and New Zealand is great for filming Worship Backgrounds because it has such a variety of content to get. There is the ocean where it's warmer, there's actually jungle up in the mountains and in the inland, and there's also huge mountains. There's also rolling, drier hills. So New Zealand really has a good collection of everything that we like to get for VMC. And what's going to make this trip super exciting is we are going to do a behind the scenes video every single day explaining to you how we go about capturing the content for Visual Media Church and all the tips and tricks along the way that we use when it comes to photography and videography to capture cinematic worship visuals. And we think this is going to be super helpful for all the members of Church Creatives Facebook group because it's going to give you guys some insight on how we shoot cinematically. So we're going to give you tips on what cameras to use in certain situations, what types of lenses, why we make the choices we do, certain gear that we think you must have if you want to get great shots, and then just all kinds of little tips and tricks for preparing for the editing room. It's not just about getting great shots in the moment. You also have to be thinking about how you're going to process that footage. Any photographer or videographer knows that so much time can be spent or even wasted when you get back to your computer and you start editing. There's a lot of time that is needed to kind of get those shots over the finish line. So we're going to share with you tips and tricks every single day about why we're shooting things a certain way. And then it's not just even just cameras, it's also the drones that we're going to be bringing. So we're pretty excited to be showing you what it's going to take to get that. So as I'm out there filming worship visuals, Mike is going to be along the way using the GH5. He's going to be out capturing the background shots on this to show you guys exactly what we're doing and what it takes. It's not as straightforward as sometimes people envision. It takes a lot of time and effort and even hiking to get to these shots that we know are going to be amazing, but they're not just sitting on the side of the road and easy to get. So it does take work to get these shots. So Mike's going to be there kind of telling the story of what it takes to fly all the way around to the other side of the earth to get these worship visuals and just kind of the stories and experiences along the way and just what it takes to get Visual Media Church content. So what are we going to be getting when we're in New Zealand? We were actually there in 2019 and we had planned on going back a year later, but obviously because it was canceled, we didn't. So we've had some time to think about what we want to get, and we really put pressure on ourselves when we go for these shoots. So this is a 14-day trip, so we hope to come back with tons of footage. So one of the things we really want to get is we want to get some great coastline footage. New Zealand, especially the South Island, has some great rugged coastline that we want to get, which we think is going to be really, really beautiful. And it just has a different feel and vibe from other places that we're used to here in North America. The other thing is we're going to find a lot of rolling, kind of drier, more arid hills. And that is going to be amazing for some epic drone long play videos. And then we're going to get back into more of the jungle scenario where we've got a few different kind of camera rig setups that we're going to experiment with. And we're going to get, again, some more long play, not just aerials, but some walking cinematic shots, progressive packs as we call them, going through the jungle. So we think there's going to be some really cool shots that, again, in North America, we don't have access to a lot of jungle scenarios. So we're really going to go for a couple of days in there. And then obviously back to the big mountains, especially Mount Cook. We're going to be hiking for a couple days around Mount Cook. We're going to spend a few sunrises there and sunsets there, and we're going to capture again some amazing 6K and 4K footage on our main cameras and the drones and an FPV drone. And what we are excited about is because we have been there before, we learned a few things on what we would like to do better and how we're gonna do them better. So we kind of get a second shot at going back to some work that we did 3 years ago, and we're able to improve on it, make it better, and just shoot it in a completely new way that we think people are gonna notice and are really gonna be impactful for churches' worship setups. So we know that we're gonna get some great footage for you guys, and we're just really excited to be able to get that shot, having firsthand knowledge of having been in some of these places and exactly where to go and how we wanna do it differently this time. So let's talk a little bit about the gear that we're bringing on this trip, because anyone that's into photography or videography really has to have a love for gear. Sometimes it's a bit of a pitfall because we just love to get new gear. We always want something bigger and better. And this is something that we always struggle with too. It's not always about having the biggest and the best, because sometimes there's logistical problems or practicality problems with bringing the biggest and the best. So one of those main kind of questions that we've had to face for this trip is, which camera do we bring as our main camera? We have a Red Raven, which I love. It's a great camera. We've had it for a few years. The problem being is that it is super heavy, and obviously the V-mount batteries are also very heavy and can take a long time to charge. And so when you're doing 4 international flights and you've got to bring this camera gear onto your carry-on, sometimes it just isn't practical because we're also bringing so much other gear. We're not just bringing one camera, we're actually bringing 2 cameras plus 2 drones, and it all has to fit on the carry-on luggage. So as much as I would love to bring the Red Raven because it has better frame rate options and I think better color, what we're going to be bringing is our 6K. The 6K is a great camera, and it actually works out to be less than half the weight of what the Red would be. And so this is huge because a lot of the times we're going to be hiking and this needs to fit into a backpack. It just needs to be more mobile, and especially with the lighter batteries, it just makes for a quicker charging scenario. We're going to be staying in a camper van, and so when you're plugged in and charging off the vehicle, which is also plugged in, you have to consider that sometimes things are going to charge slower, and it's just not as convenient. You can't plug in 10 different things. We have 4 plugs that we're going to have to be charging all of our cameras, all of our drones, and all of our computers on at the same time while we're sleeping. So thinking about those logistical problems sometimes means that you can't bring everything that you need. And that is the same for lenses. I have a lot of different lenses. I have some prime lenses, which I think are beautiful. The problem being is I don't have space to bring all of them. So how do you find the right range and focal length? So what we've pared it down to is 2 lenses. One of the lenses I'm filming on right now is the Dokina 11-16. It's a great camera lens for all the wide shots. And then our main lens is going to be a Sigma 24-70. This Sigma 24-70 is going to be our workhorse lens. It covers enough of a wide angle to a bit of a zoom that this is going to be the main one that we use. It is quite hefty and heavy, but this sure beats using 3 or 4 different lenses that we'd have to kind of fit into a backpack. And so that is our plan around lensing. There are so many other lenses that I wish I could bring, especially something 70-200. But again, I just don't have space to fit it into my carry-on, and I can't fit it obviously into my check-in luggage because that is an accident waiting to happen. So we're having to make hard choices all the time on what to bring and what not to bring. And this is always really true, especially for church photographers and videographers. You can't have everything on you all at once. So it is sometimes a really healthy kind of setup to just pare it down to 1 camera, 1 lens, and just work with what you have, even though it might not be the perfect setup. It is a good challenge and it definitely stretches you to be better at your craft. When you set up restrictions like that, you tend to get creative the more restrictions that you have. So this is really good advice, not only for us at VMC that we've had to learn over the years, but also for you when you're working or volunteering at your church. Make sure that you're putting restrictions so that you become more creative. So another quick behind the scenes I want to show you is how we're packing for this trip. I have 4 international flights and I am meeting Mike on the second leg. So I have a flight to the city where Mike is located, and then we from there are going to fly together. So the issue being is that I have all the gear here in the office, so I have to be able to pack gear for 2 people into either my check-in luggage or my 2 pieces of carry-on. So I have a checked bag, and I have a backpack, and I have a Pelican case. That has to fit all of the gear for 2 weeks, as well as all of my travel stuff, like my clothes and everything that I need to kind of get around for 2 weeks in both warm and snowy conditions. So obviously packing for me is going to be a huge issue. So what I've kind of figured out that I need to do is I have packed my Pelican case as tight as I possibly can get it. I've got all the charging cables, and I've got parts of the drone, the behind the scenes camera, the 6K, and the lenses in there. In my backpack, I'm also packing a GoPro, a small gimbal, and the Mavic 3 Cine. And then unfortunately, it just didn't have room to fit the FPV drone. The FPV drone is something that we haven't taken on a big trip like this yet, so I am super excited about it. It's gonna create a whole new visual for Visual Media Church that we haven't done yet. This idea of some more like cinematic swooping, a little bit more movement, really close to the edge of mountain shots. And I would love to put it in my carry-on because that is the best way to make sure that you get your gear to a location. But unfortunately, I just don't have room, so I'm actually packing it in the Pelican case it came in, and then I'm putting it in my checked luggage. This is obviously a huge risk, and I would never recommend anyone else to do it, but I really want to get it there, and so I'm taking a bit of a risk by putting it in there. I'm making sure it's safe, and then hopefully nothing happens to it. We will definitely see what happens when we get to New Zealand. Hopefully everything gets there in one piece. And then what I have to do is obviously pack in a tripod, and then I'm using my clothes to kind of pack in and around it. Obviously, because I'm so passionate about this, clothes come second to gear, so ultimately I want to make sure all the gear gets there, but I also need clothes for 14 days in New Zealand. So we're hoping that you guys join with us, watch these videos, comment, like, share. If you have any questions about how we're doing things, or you see something that you want more information on, please comment on the videos. We will be there. I will be there to comment back and give you guys as many tips and tricks as I can. So if you have questions about how we do things at VMC, or the gear that we're using, or why we're doing things a certain way, please do not hesitate to comment, and I would love to interact with you. So enjoy the videos, and we'll see you in New Zealand. Bye.